Welcome to today's webinar, Celebrating Women in Business. I am your host, Heather Mylan-Maines. We are thrilled that you've taken your time to join us today as we celebrate as an IIBA community women internationally on this day. The International Institute, you can move the slide, Mariah. The International Institute of Business Analysis, IIBA, is a not-for-profit professional association serving the global business analysis community. A recognized thought leader, IIBA is dedicated to elevating the discipline of business analysis. We provide our global community with relevant tools, resources, and networking opportunities to take control of your career. The pandemic has made it clearer than ever that we all need each other more. The theme for this year's International Women's Day webinar is Choose to Challenge. Before I introduce myself and our panel, can we launch our first poll question? Please select the response that best describes your work over the past year. What is your situation? We know the pandemic has impacted our job responsibilities, how and where we work, how we juggle our home and personal responsibilities, and in some cases, women have had to leave the workforce. Go ahead and answer what your work experiences are. While everyone is answering this question, I will cover a little bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions during the webinar, please type them into the questions tab in your control panel. It should be on the right-hand side of your screen when you open that up. We will answer some of your questions at the end of the session or during the session as it is relevant. You can find today's deck in the handouts tab of the webinar if you want to download it. And this webinar will be recorded and available on our IIBA webinar archives page within 7 business days of the broadcast. Let's go ahead and meet our panelists. I'm going to turn on my webcam. Welcome, everybody. My name is Heather Mylan-Maines. I am a business analyst, consultant from Des Moines, Iowa. Kind of something that's unusual about me is that I have never lived anywhere but my same neighborhood. I went to college and graduate school in my same city, but I leave it as often as I possibly can. I now only have 5 states that I need to visit in the United States. Let's meet our panelists. First, let's welcome Chichi Ubani.
Hi. Hi, can you see me? Okay. Hi, thank you, Heather. Thank you, IIBA. I'm really honored to be on this panel with this beautiful women celebrating International Women's Day. So my name is Chichi Ubani. I'm a Business Systems Analyst and I work with Canadian Red Cross. So I've had an interesting career, and a new immigrant in Canada. I am originally from Nigeria, and I would like to share one challenge that I've overcome recently. So just to let people know more about me. And growing up, I had a speech disorder, which made me to be quiet, and I would want to be in the background, in the shadows, and I would not want to, talk. So growing up, and that was how I worked for a long time till I think my turning point was when I went to business school, where each classroom was like a boardroom, where we were encouraged to speak out, in solving business problems. You were supposed to contribute your ideas. And that was when I realized that women, we've been in the shadows for too long, and that for the kind of woman that I was aspiring to be, there was no way I could afford to continue to be in the shadows. And that was when I started challenging myself. And that was when I started, trying to improve myself. And, I've come a long way since then. And in my journey, I've had people encourage me, and I've had women, strong women, support me. And, that's at this point, this is where I want to challenge us as women to continue to support each other, because that's the only way we can take our place in the society. So, and another thing, one last thing I want to say is that our limits are the ones that we place on ourselves, because I've come a long way from that little girl, shy girl that never wanted to speak up, to who I am today. Thank you, Heather.
Oh, thanks, Chichi. I love everything you just said. I think that applies to many more people than we realize. So thank you for sharing that. Next, let's welcome Lauren House.
Hello, thank you very much, Heather. Hello, everyone. And I just want to echo exactly what Chichi just said. It's an absolute honour being with these amazing women here on the panel today and speaking with you all. So, yeah, I'm Lauren House. I work for the Bank of England, so I am based in the UK. I've been a BA for around 4 years now, and I just want to share a challenge that I've personally faced in the last year. So generally being a natural extrovert, my life before lockdown was just 100 miles an hour. I used to love seeing a full diary of plans, and then lockdown hit. So my biggest plan was going from the living room to the kitchen on my day to day. So not having that human interaction and being left with just my own thoughts, and work really being the only distraction was really difficult. But I did buy my first home in lockdown. So after 27 years of living with my parents and my brother, having the buzz of that house, I was now living on my own. It was a great project, don't get me wrong, and it kept me occupied. But the loneliness I had during lockdown, even at my parents', to then go to living on my own, the loneliness was even greater. I couldn't share my new home with my family and friends like I dreamt of. And just generally not being around loved ones, the loneliness for me was the challenge. Past year, I've worked probably harder than ever, I would say, because that was my only distraction. And I think my own well-being suffered as a consequence. I was just fixated on still keeping busy, and I didn't practice self-care no matter how many times my manager was telling me to, and all my family were telling me to slow down. I did start to burn out. I decided I needed to redirect the energy that I had, and I began setting up the Young Business Analyst group. And this really gave me a new sense of purpose during lockdown, I think. So now we've got, over 400 international members already, and just being around other enthusiastic volunteers is just so infectious. And I am proud to say that the senior leadership team on the Young Business Analyst group are all females. So again, a massive achievement for me through all those challenges, really. But again, thank you for being here and joining us all, and it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Heather.
Oh, thanks, Lauren. I love that you identified a problem because you were now living on your own, which is a big change in anybody's life, let alone during a pandemic. But rather than looking for someone else to solve that problem for you, you found something to occupy your time and help you give back, which actually does fill the loneliness. On times in my life when I've been pretty lonely, it's like, well, find someone else to help. And it really does make a difference. So thank you. I know we're going to talk about self-care a little bit later, so thank you, Lauren. I'd also like to introduce Julie Devlin.
Hi, Heather. Thank you so much. And it is an absolute honor to be here. I'd first like to say Happy International Women's Day 2021 to everyone. And if you haven't had a chance yet, check out the hashtag Choose to Challenge on Twitter. Check out the hashtag on other social media venues, and you'll be able to see what other women are choosing to challenge. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Julie Devlin. I work for UKG, which is Ultimate Kronos Group. And my background is in human resources. I spent 17 years as an HR vice president, focused on improving the workplace culture of organization, and also enhancing the employee experience. Now at UKG, what I do is I do a lot of writing on HR topics. I do a lot of speaking on HR topics, and I work with organizations around the world to try and make their employee experience better. So, like I said, I'm super excited to be here today with these awesome women and with all of you. And instead of choosing a personal challenge to share today, I'm going to say something that I hope that all of you can also take in and really hear. So I think you should choose to challenge all of us to be vocal and really celebrate our successes as women, not only in the workplace, but also outside of the workplace too. I think something that all of us experience at one time is imposter syndrome. You know, where maybe we don't feel like we're worthy or we don't feel like we're qualified enough. So we stay silent about our successes. But I'm choosing to challenge that notion. Be vocal about your successes. Tell people. Write things on social media. Celebrate yourselves. And I think I need to take some of my own advice as well. So I'll leave it at that. Again, super happy to be here today. Cannot wait for this great discussion.
Awesome, Julie. I resonate so much with the imposter syndrome situation, and it's something I've been fighting for a long time. And part of that is related to some inequities in our workplaces between men and women, and the concept of if you do celebrate your successes, you know, you're proud or in a bad way and all those things. But I really appreciate you wishing everyone happy International Women's Day and giving us some place to look for those positive comments. I like thinking about how can we build each other up. So I would take that challenge one step further. I want you to celebrate each other. So not just yourself, but when you see someone that's done a great job and she might not realize it, why not call it out? Sing our praises, because we might need our other people to say that too. So I love it. Great challenge.
Thank you.
All right. I am so thrilled to meet these women. And I want to say something else about Julie's profession. For those of you that are listening and are business analysts, there is so much overlap. We've had fun talking about some things that Julie specializes in and talks about. I'm like, yep, that applies to us. Yep, that applies to us. So she has a lot of expertise from a human perspective, and we can add to it our project perspective for a full picture. So this is going to be a great discussion.
Absolutely. The professions really do have a lot of overlap. And I think it's really interesting as we've been working together, just realizing how much overlap there is between HR and business analysis. So
we're gonna see what we can do about maybe some cross-pollination of concepts and ideas and thought leadership with human resources.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Next slide, please. And we've got some poll results. So we can see that a lot of people are now working from home. Some people are dealing with working from home and having remote learning. A very small percentage are working on site. Interesting stuff. The working from home is a big change for all of us, I think. Next slide, thanks. So today we're going to talk about what it's like as a woman working and sharing your experiences, insights, all the things that you might have advice for other women as we talk through some of the challenges. This year's theme for International Women's Day is Choose to Challenge. We can all choose to challenge. We can call out gender bias. We can call out inequality. We can seek to celebrate women, all the things we've already said about today. So from challenge comes change. So as we challenge things, we're going to see changes. I want to share a thought exchange with you. I'm going to talk a little bit about this tool. And the question we want you to think about and answer is what idea you choose to challenge this year. We heard some ideas from our panelists. Use the link found in the chat. There should be a link in the chat, I believe. There are slides. You can use the QR reader. I do usually speak English. QR reader to pull up this tool. And when you open it, it's going to ask you to accept some privacy rules. Everything is anonymous, even though you're accepting some privacy rules, so don't be afraid about that. You can add thoughts throughout this presentation. You can add thoughts right now. As people add thoughts, you can choose to give stars to particular thoughts that someone has shared that you agree with or resonates with you. And we're going to give another chance throughout the presentation if you need to, but the chat should have the link to it. So if you have any questions, certainly use the question section and we can help you get that going. Next slide, please. Globally, we are seeing some big changes for women in the workforce. So in the US, women made up 46% of the workforce before COVID. And with the collapse of childcare, homeschooling, all these other demands that women are facing, we've seen some women leaving the workforce, leaving the paid workforce, because boy, being a mom at home is definitely work. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. The U.S. Labor Department shows 2.2 million women left the workforce between February and October 2020. In Canada, a report from the World Bank reports that 20,000 women left the workforce during the same time period. So we've got a lot of North American changes, and I'm sure that those changes also resonate throughout the world. We also have found that this report shows that men are picking up jobs 3 times as much as women are. Something to challenge. We have another quick poll we'd like you to answer. So how has your job been impacted? Do you have a change in job duties? If you've had to leave the workforce, please select yes or no, how that relates to you. Some jobs certainly are more adept at virtual things. Take just a minute to see how that poll works. Do we have some results yet? Oh, interesting. So a lot of people have working the same job, maybe just in a different way. We've got a few who have, I don't know what the numbers are. Can I see the numbers on this? Do you have numbers or responses or just percentages? Okay. So 36% of the audience has had a change in their job duties. 64% of they're doing the same job, just maybe differently. Interesting. Chichi and Lauren, what do you think about these results? Do they align with what you're seeing in your organization or your network?
Yes. Okay, I guess I can go first. So there's no everyone. So this result is clear and it shows what is the situation of women in this pandemic, and I'm sure everyone will agree that this pandemic has been challenging for everyone. We heard what Lauren shared. For me personally, I was affected. So when we're talking about these numbers, I guess I can say that I am in that number, because during the pandemic I actually lost my job, and I decided to leave my job at the beginning of the pandemic. I actually didn't lose it. I decided to leave because children were at home. My children were sent home, and as the primary caregiver for my children, I had to take that decision to stay back to take care of my children. But what I didn't expect during this period was how difficult that it was going to be, because then they were doing virtual learning, and of course parents are not trained teachers, but we had to give them that support, which we didn't have training for. And during the pandemic, we were not interacting with friends and all that, and it was really challenging for me as a mother. And for someone like me, who I've always been a career woman, at some point it started affecting me, because when I wanted to go back to the workforce, it now became difficult to get a job. And remember that at that point I was also kind of new in Canada, so many things began to play for me, because I was kind of didn't have so much Canadian experience, and in the middle of a pandemic, so many people were losing their jobs, and it was difficult for so many people to get a job, and this was what I was faced with. But this is the point where I would say women should challenge themselves, because at this point I had to remain focused. It was difficult, and I would say if you're in this situation, because the truth is that there's still people that are still in this space, it's okay to cry sometimes. It's okay to feel depressed, but the only thing I will encourage women is that you always have to pick yourself up, remain focused, because remind yourself where you are going to, because that was what I did. And with the support of people, I was able to go past that period. And we have to also talk about the the effect this kind of thing will have on your mental health. Because at some point I went into depression. That's the truth. But this is the point where you have to reach out to family and allow yourself, ask for help, from your loved ones, and you
Yes.
really come
I
out
love
of this.
that. That's so true.
Yeah.
And your experience with being a mom and taking care of kids, you're new to a country. I mean, so many things you're dealing with. I love that you focus on picking yourself up. Now, Lauren is at an entirely different experience and yet faced some of those same challenges as she already shared. So in your network, what are you seeing happen, Lauren?
Yeah, so I think for me, I don't think work duties have changed. So workload may not have increased, but I found a lot of people will say workload has increased, but it's because of how much our environment has changed. And I think the lack of motivation when you're at home, if you are facing that loneliness or the extra caring responsibilities that you have, you've got to dig deeper to keep working at the same pace that we were working before. So the positives I've found in that, covering for colleagues that have got caring responsibilities now, I've managed to get to know them better. I've got to know them on a personal level a lot more than ever I would before. I'm in these people's homes with them. You were all in my home right now. You see the children in the background, or you've got a kitten at your screen. These things happen day to day, and I think that's a real positive. I mean, the Bank of England generally they've put so many different things in place. I mean, before this, there was a whole section, markets and banking, operational area within the Bank of England, couldn't work from home at all. So there was a complete shift, and it was, tech teams having to make sure that we could support that and support that demand and that increase. But also the bank, when they could, managed to open back up the offices after our first lockdown here, just to support those that were struggling with their well-being and things from home, giving them the office as a safe space, and they managed to adapt. So for some people, that was a godsend. And I think it's really challenging traditional ways of working, especially at the bank. And I don't think we'll ever go back to how things were before, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that is a positive.
Such an interesting thought about our culture entirely changing. Who knows what the future will hold? Julie might have some insight with human resources and focusing on a lot of different metrics that we don't have information for. So Julie, you want to share something about your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you talk about culture, when you talk about work in general, work has changed, and not only has it changed, it changed virtually overnight. So we were looking at the acceleration of work. Things that we once thought were 10 years in the future, 15 years in the future, are now here, right? And what companies have noticed, what companies have realized, is that they are able to get work done virtually, which is a really interesting dynamic, because we saw the numbers. Several of you are working from home. But what you see on the screen, I don't need to tell you, if you are a woman, women have been disproportionately affected due to COVID-19. And there's a couple of different reasons for that. First, women, the occupations that women are traditionally employed in, they've been hit harder. So we think of things like restaurants and retail establishments and hospitality type professions. And Chichi mentioned about caregiving. I think Heather did too, and Lauren too, probably. That's going to be a theme that we see throughout this discussion. The fact that women are traditionally caretakers, they've had to leave the workforce, and they've had to stay home and not only become childcare workers, but in many cases become teachers, right? So that's definitely something to consider as well. When we talk about healthcare workforce, women are comprise more than 2/3 when we're talking about the U.S. healthcare workforce. And it's interesting, at registered nurses, 89% of registered nurses are women, and 88% of nurse practitioners are women. So that's disproportionate. And, healthcare workers have really been on the front lines of this pandemic. And, a lot of nurses have gotten sick, so that has been disproportionately affected due to COVID-19. So unemployment has also reached high rates, higher than men. And I think we also need to recognize that women of color have also been disproportionately affected in this pandemic, due to several different factors, which we could talk about on another session. But just knowing that these things are real, I think, is important for us to remember. You know, these numbers don't lie. Women definitely have been disproportionately affected. So the question is, what can we do to make things better?
Yeah, what is it that we can do to challenge? One of the participants shared that not only, Chichi, I totally agree with you. Thankfully, my children are past primary schooling age, thank heavens, because I'm not a teacher, nor did I stay at home for a couple of reasons. One, I don't have those skills, or maybe the patience, or, you know, who knows. I kind of joke that either I would be dead or they would. So luckily, I don't have to worry about that. Julie mentioned about different skills we need to get. What about the managers? How have you seen managers have to respond? Because now they're managing their staffs virtually, and a lot of their staff members have entirely different needs that they're juggling. Have you seen a shift, Julie, in that?
Absolutely. Managers have had to lead with empathy more than ever right now. And a lot of managers, you know, companies that have invested time in training managers on how to lead remotely have also come out better in this circumstance as well. This has been a very bad time for folks who like to micromanage, because, you know, I've heard some horror stories in the HR world about managers asking folks to stay on their camera all day so they could watch them to make sure that they're working. If any of your employers are doing that, that's not cool. They should not be doing that. I'm like, hey, you know, if you want to watch me sit here and type, you know, that's your choice, I guess. But that's not showing trust. That's not showing compassion. Flexibility in the workplace has been, it's no longer a nice to have, it's a have to have, just based on our circumstances. And I think that organizations that train managers to understand that and train managers to know that, yeah, during this time that is unprecedented. And, you know, there's a lot of buzzwords that surround COVID, unprecedented being one of them, new normal being another. But, you know, there are so many different things that come up that aren't normal, that managers have to understand. There's an old view of work and a new view of work. The old view, you had your outside interests and your business interests as separate. Now those two things are intertwined. So I think it's important for us to remember that and to train managers to know that.
And certainly one of the things we could do, and I think as workers, if we're finding that our managers are struggling and not understanding how to lead with empathy, why not recommend that some kind of training come into the organization to help them be more successful? And it would probably make everybody happier if they can change, because they're changing too. That's a big shift, depending on where they work, for sure. So with all these changes taking place, Julie kind of joked about, you want to see me type 24/7. By the way, we don't longer sit at our monitors for solid 8 hours, because, by the way, that's not healthy for a lot of reasons, but we're combining our personal things too. I find working at home extremely distracting, because now I've kind of come to enjoy that I can go throw a load of laundry in and get to walk up and down the stairs a little bit to get my body moving, which is very healthy. So thinking about this, what kinds of self-care have you been doing? I know for me, one of my self-care items is taking a bath. I find a bath to be miraculous for me. It calms me down and helps me think. It centers me. It gives me a few moments to just be myself. And that's really something I do to help with my self-care. What about you, Chichi? What are you doing for some self-care?
So I have 3 children, and when you have 3 very active children, self-care becomes something that you have to do, something that you have to be very intentional about, because you hardly have time for yourself. Someone like me, I have to juggle between work and, you know, taking care of the children. So that can be very challenging sometimes, you know, and then, you know, assignments and all that. The most difficult was like a month or 2 ago, when the children were stayed home again and they had to do classes virtually. So that was a tough time. So as a mother, you have to decide that you need a me time that you just dedicate to yourself. And for me, and it's also difficult to have a me time without having the children included in that me time because they're always around. So what we do in our home is that every Friday is a movie night. So every member of the house looks forward to Friday nights because for us, that's the time, mommy, you have to leave the computer, daddy, you have to drop everything, and we sit down like as a family and we watch movies. And then the children also know that night you can stay awake till 12 midnight and mommy won't, So that's for me. I also look forward to that time because it's a time that I have to leave everything and focus on just relaxing. And another time, I during my lunch breaks, sometimes I try to relax, do yoga, skip, so that helps to clear my mind so that when I come back, I feel refreshed. So that's some few things I do to
I love that you have that you find so much joy and peace in just focusing on your family. What a beautiful moment that must be
Yes.
in your
Yes.
household. I like that too. Lauren, how about you? What are some things you are doing to take care of yourself? You mentioned some pretty big changes in your life that would require
Yeah.
self-care anyway. And then let's throw in the pandemic and wow.
Yes. So as I mentioned, 100 miles an hour for me. So it's safe to say I've tried 101 different things to try and keep myself occupied. So for me, I've danced since I was about 6 years old. And unfortunately, I had an injury when I was 18, and it took me 10 years to build the confidence back up to start dancing again. So I started at the end of 2019. So I was a couple of months in, found my passion again. Brilliant. This was my self-care. This was my shut off time. And then you shut the dance studios. So that was gone. But thankfully, I can still do that virtually. But I've tried so many different things. I've tried meditation colouring, which when you're a perfectionist isn't ideal. Quite anxious, so that didn't quite work for me. But Zoom quizzes and socials with my friends still have been such a massive thing, and walks with my mum, walks on my own. Yeah, I've been definitely proactively trying to practice a lot more self-care, especially more
That's good.
recently.
I found myself not working in an office complex or a corporate environment. I actually walk less. It seems less natural to get up, and when the getting a drink is only a few feet away versus needing to go maybe to another floor or outside. So I love that you're carving out time for yourself. I think that's so important, and I know that's definitely something that's lacked for me. Julie, how about you? What have you been doing for yourself, or what are you seeing in the human resources industry?
Oh my gosh.
I
Again,
know this is
another
your great topic.
presentation. Yeah, this topic is fantastic. I think it's important for us as women to realize if we don't take care of ourselves first, it's going to be difficult for us to take care of others. And with women being in that traditional caretaker role, it's more important than ever to find something that's going to work for you from a self-care perspective. What works for me, I love riding my Peloton. I do CrossFit. I love to exercise and I love sports. What works for me during this time is having a set schedule during my day. Turning off at a certain time, because it's very, very easy for us to stay connected 24/7. It's important to know that a lot of vacation time is not being used during this pandemic. Why is that? One, we don't really have anywhere to go, right? But it's not necessarily a good thing, because mentally, our mental health is affected by being constantly on, constantly working. So it's important, if you have some vacation time, take some time off, take some time to yourself. Self-care wise, you see the suggestions on the screen. Some of that may work for you, but find something that makes you feel alive. Find something that makes you, really get excited, and find something that fulfills you personally. I think that's so important to remember.
Oh, I agree. Great suggestions for sure. I think we're going to show another poll, and I would like to hear from our audience a little bit about what you're doing to take time for yourself. Take a moment to answer that. I agree. It's interesting about the vacation too. I'm wondering if there isn't a business opportunity in some sort of creative staycations and finding some way for a family to have like a treasure hunt in their own house or something. You got to do something to get away for sure.
Yeah.
Lauren, I know
Absolutely.
you mentioned that you had worked so much more. So I'm guessing that you're not taking your vacation either. Is that true?
No. The only leave that I actually took last year was when I was moving house. So I very much would like some leave very soon. No, I need to plan this year and start getting some time just to switch off from work.
Yes, maybe set up a dance studio in your house.
Now
Yeah.
that is a good idea.
I think Julie is actually right. As she was talking, I realized that I need to take some time off, because in this pandemic and especially when you're working from home, it's easy to just go on and on and on, and you don't really just tell yourself it's time to take a break. So Julie, thank you very much. As you say that, I just reminded myself I needed a few days off.
Absolutely. You do need some time off. All of us need some time off to refresh,
Yeah.
to revive, to build back up the energy that we need to do our work effectively.
Yeah, it's very
Yes.
important.
Wonderful. So I see that the results of this poll show that people are choosing to do an activity that they enjoy, and then they're also making time to relax, which I think is pretty important. And that virtual connection. Lauren mentioned how much she misses her family. I think I personally also miss any connections in an office where you can have those quick conversations about how are you. You can see a little bit more easily when someone's struggling, and I'm missing that connection. It can be replicated with virtual, just like we're doing right here, but it's not quite the same. So finding different ways to connect, I think, is a really good one too. I see the celebrating each other's wins is a little bit small. That's something we can maybe start to do as women, to take up Julie's challenge for sure. Interesting stuff. So another challenge that women face is, how can women gain confidence? There's something about being a woman societally and culturally that I predict is not just in the United States, but across the world. Lauren can confirm that for me. We're often told to get ahead that we need to demonstrate confidence. Yet, when we do, we're often labeled, see if these are relative to you. You're labeled bossy or pushy or aggressive or even angry as you're trying to exhibit confidence. Kind of like when I was talking to my teenage kids, they didn't really pay attention till I kind of yelled. I think in the workplace, we have to speak quite loudly to be heard sometimes, and it could be related to those words. But in fact, it could be that if a man would demonstrate that sort of confidence, that they may not be labeled with those same labels. So how do we help women feel comfortable to challenge effectively with confidence? How can we gain confidence? This is a big one. So I have a story that I want to share that relates to this. In my career, at one point, I was new to a business area. I was a relatively new business analyst as well. So I was learning about how to be good as an analyst, and I was needing to learn an entirely new industry. So I went to my boss, who happened to have been a man, and I said to him, I see that there's an industry conference coming up for this business. I would really like to go so that I can gain some insight into the industry, the tools they use, the lingo, all these things. And his response to me still makes me shudder, because he said to me, I need to we'll say Bob. I need to let Bob go because he won't ask for himself. What a strange experience. Talk about inequality and bias. I still could not believe that I was not allowed to go to the conference, even though I did have the confidence to ask. So when women have those experiences, how do we get back on this horse again and have confidence? So you might have those experiences in your background as well. What do you think? Julie, Lauren, or Chichi, what are your thoughts on this?
Gosh, I have several thoughts on it, Heather. you know, how do you display confidence without being labeled negatively? I think that it's important for us to find our inner voice that gives us the strength to understand that even if we are labeled negatively, that it's okay to still, you know, it's the other person's problem, if that makes sense. I think that women have come a long way in this regard, but I do agree that there are times that women do come off, they come off to others based on stereotypes and whatnot. In a negative way, when really we're just trying to be assertive, we're just trying to be ourselves. So I don't know that there's a staple answer for this. I think that a lot of it depends on your inner voice, and a lot of it depends on education as well. When I say education, I mean educating others who have these preconceived notions of these negative labels and what they are, educating them that it's not right to have those notions, educating them that this has been something that women have worked to overcome for years and years and years, especially in the workplace.
Oh,
Yeah.
so true.
Okay.
Lauren, you are younger in your career, so you've had the experience of a more enlightened culture, I might say.
Mhm.
What are your experiences with this?
Yeah, so I'll go back to the Young Business Analyst Network group, sorry, that we launched in September last year. We celebrate different days within the working calendar. We're very inclusive already, but it's natural to us. It was never a thing to question. We've got such a diverse team. And as I mentioned, the senior leadership team is all women. But that only occurred to me when we were speaking on this panel and when I met you guys a week ago. It's not as at the forefront. It's not as much of an effort, which I think is fantastic. I think is a really good sign. And it's just part of what's ingrained in us now. But actually moving back to the confidence thing, I remember when I was at school, and again, it was a female teacher. I was very young, and it was feedback given to my parents. I'm too loud and I ask too many questions. Now, that's followed me through. And even when I first started at the bank, I remember having the same feedback about the too many questions. Now, it's really funny because one of my strengths now is I ask the right questions, and I am confident enough to ask the questions. And as a BA, that what was deemed and I was told was a weakness, I continued, thankfully, is now my strength. And I think that's really powerful, because I think people's words and what they perceive to be a weakness can actually be turned into a strength. And I think that's a really big thing that I've learned. That loudness and that confidence was perceived as loudness, and that curiosity was perceived in a negative way, which I actually don't agree with, and is finally a strength.
Yes. And you know, feedback is one of those things that just because you hear it, it certainly doesn't make it true. You can
No.
evaluate it and you can choose to make a change or think, you know what, that makes me awesome.
Yeah.
Lauren, I actually had a teacher for my son. I have sons. And he shared with me similar things. I wish Wyatt were less confident in his answers. So I left going, I don't care what grade you get in this class. That guy's an idiot. Because why would we not want children to have confidence to challenge with questions? It's a beautiful skill. So kudos to you. You rock. Chichi, I bet you have had some issues, not just with being a woman, not just with
Yeah.
this. You come to a new country, so you've got some cultural differences you might have to be dealing with confidence. How have you seen this for you?
So I think I'm really blessed to be working for an organization where you are allowed to express yourself. So I haven't really had this problem, since I came here, and because like I said, the support has been great. I work with most people in my team are women, and my boss is a woman, and she's fantastic. So I haven't really had this problem, but I think I've worked in a place, I've had this experience where I've worked with a boss, a man, and who had a problem with women speaking up. And so, like I shared earlier, my turning point in being more confident was after I left business school. So I started this job where, you know, I was so full of confidence and I had just rediscovered myself. You know, I was just this person that just had so many ideas. I needed to, you know, express myself. And then I found myself in an organization where it was women were expected to take the back seat. It felt at some point I felt like they were trying to put us in a box. That was actually how I was feeling. And to be honest, I was told one day by my boss that I was aggressive. And yes, I was told I was aggressive because, you know, I'll come with ideas. I'm very passionate about my ideas. And when I heard that, it dawned on me that this wasn't the right place for me. That is it. Because if you are in a place where they're always trying to suppress you and you can't even, so I tried, but the thing was that I've always found myself getting into troubles and problems because I just couldn't keep quiet. And so the thing is, as a woman, if you find yourself, the most important thing is to know yourself, understand yourself, because when you're in that kind of situation, you might lose your voice, you might lose your confidence. But if you understand who you are and you stay true to yourself, you know, and the best thing is to leave that environment, to be honest, because, you know, if you try to change it and it's not working, if you stay on, you lose your confidence and you lose yourself, and that's not good. That's not what we're trying to achieve here. That's why we're celebrating International Women's Day, right?
Yes, no, I love that. That is another choice that we have. We do,
Yes.
within reason. We're hearing how difficult it is to find new jobs, and that's a reality. But it does allow you to ask yourself, is this the right organization for me?
Yes.
When I was in graduate school, one of the things one of my professors asked was, how many of you have fired your companies? And he was referencing having the confidence to leave a place that doesn't serve you. So Chichi, you've said that so eloquently and beautifully, and you're right. We owe it to ourselves to work in an environment where we can succeed and feel successful. So I think that's another challenge to ourselves, is to, it's okay to leave and find something else, because it's out there. There is someone who will appreciate your aggressive question asking.
Definitely.
I may have heard that a time or two myself, Lauren, actually. All right, let's go back to our thought exchange. Let's see how that is going. So if you haven't already contributed or thought about it, that's how you can. There's still a link in there. So let's see what we've got so far. Isn't that a beautiful diagram of all of our thoughts connecting together? I see yes, I'm challenging what I think I'm capable of stepping on. So true. You guys, this weekend I tried oysters. Okay, they were cooked. They're still not for me, but that was out of my comfort zone. Love it. So what's our other one? Let me see. Gotta move my things. Let's see. Set realistic boundaries. Yes, because we can do anything, but we can't do everything. Absolutely. We have to take care of ourselves first, or else we're not going to be able to take care of anyone else. For sure. Recognize each other and support where needed. Beautiful. Motivate my female friends and little girls to take more risk and don't be afraid to fail. Another thing I heard recently, and within someone's household, the word failure is feedback. What a beautiful thing to shift your thinking. Failure is feedback. I mean, it's fine to make mistakes. What did you learn about it? How are you going to change things for next time? I love that. Such good things. So go ahead and take some time to keep adding that, and we can see how that goes. We'll check back in just a minute as well. So we've got a few minutes, just a very few minutes. Mariah and can you help me with questions? Do we have more questions that we
I'm
have
looking
not
at the
answered
questions
yet?
box right now, and we do have a few questions coming through there already. Everyone on the call right now, feel free to put questions in the box too.
Yes, I was going to say I might need you to read those to me because I'm not having success locating them, but we would love to answer them.
So we have one. We have one that is coming from a man who is asking, so
So he's saying that he had a situation where a woman was tasked with getting technical information from a male senior executive as a necessary part of her deliverable. The executive took her questions as being too aggressive and a level of insubordination. It escalated with a meeting with HR, and she was reprimanded. The woman later left the company. As a man and a manager of female staff, this gentleman is asking, he's troubled by what feels like sexism, and is there any advice that you can suggest to him if he finds himself hearing a feedback similar to this, and how he can challenge it?
Julie, I'm sure you have something to say too. And Lauren, Lauren
Yeah.
hit it on the nail on the head. She knows how to ask the right questions. There's a lot. We don't have enough information to know what happened in that exchange, so it's a little hard to answer. But Julie definitely has coached people through this as a human resources expert.
Yeah, sexism has always been there, unfortunately. I think that, gosh, what can you do to sort of help with this situation so that it doesn't happen again? I think that men can, when you have that proverbial locker room talk, challenge those ideas as well. If somebody says something that comes off as offensive towards women, say, hey man, that's not cool, or whatever. I think that speaking up is important. Being an ally for women is important. I'll give you an example. Just earlier today on a call with my team at work at UKG, I actually, on International Women's Day, I thanked my coworker Chaz for being an advocate for women, and the other women on my team did too. And what he does is he helps to elevate us. He recognizes that sometimes women do need a little lift to be elevated, to be seen. So I think that men, being allies is really, really important. And depending on the situation, there are a lot of different things that can be done. I think that in that situation, obviously we would need to have more information about the situation, but going to HR, asking, hey, what can I do in order to help? Maybe having a focus group or something like that. Having discussions, just making sure that the dialogue is there and that things aren't suppressed, I think is very important.
Absolutely. Lauren or Chichi, do you want to add anything to it? I have something to add too. Unlike Julie, I always have opinions. Okay, Lauren mentioned something very important, and she's a younger business analyst, but she's already, and I'm assuming, I'm not sure who asked the question, if this is a business analysis activity, there is a lot that needs to be done with stakeholder analysis. And potentially one way to have made that situation better without knowing all the details is that the person who was asking the question probably should have done a little bit more work to understand that executive, understand how they communicate. You have to be very specific, and I teach people, when you have an interview with someone, you need to do your homework. You need to do your BA homework, because people don't like being asked things that you already can find someplace else. So I'm making an assumption that that could have been some of it. It also sounds like personally that executive needed some coaching. So we've got a lot of things at play, but that can be hard. I mean, what's the culture of that company? Yeah, it's a challenge, but I love what Julie said about being an advocate for women. And it might be that you needed a training situation with the young analyst, because she was asking questions that may have been perceived as, well, you can find that someplace else, or maybe she was asking questions in a way that the person didn't communicate. Maybe they're a visual learner. There's a lot of scenarios in that case, but great question. Thank you for bringing that up. And thank you for listening and being an advocate for women. We love that. Any other questions? I think we've got time for a couple more, maybe.
Someone had asked about when we see the stats as more women leaving the workforce during the pandemic. They asked the question, is there something that we can be focusing on our challenges to have the most impact to help prevent this?
Yes. I'm sorry. I do have an answer for this. I think, when you look at organizations, why are women leaving? Well, so often it's because of that childcare issue. we can go to our leadership, we can go to our managers, and we can ask them, hey, are there any interventions maybe the company can do to help us with childcare? You know, the cost of childcare is out of control. There are a lot of companies during this time that have actually given benefits to employees, childcare credits, that kind of thing. But the other problem that we have right now is that a lot of childcares have been closed. So there, you know, that's just another challenge that we have to work to overcome. But you know, going to the folks, the decision makers in the company, and asking for what you might need as a worker, as a woman, as you know, an employee, can really help the greater good. And the worst they can do is say no, which hopefully they don't.
Especially because you're so aggressive asking for that.
Yeah.
Chichi, what do you think? Because you were in this situation and needed to leave your workplace, if I understood you correctly, to stay home and help your kids.
Yes.
Was there something your employer could have done differently?
Yes. So Julie has already mentioned the part about childcare, and this brings, while that question was being asked, I remembered a friend of mine who got a job, and the company is here in Ottawa, and she lives in a different city, and the company is telling her that a few months from now, because some companies are trying to transition, you know, move from virtual to, you know, coming to work and, you know, coming to the office, and they're telling her a few months down the line she might need to move to Ottawa. And you know, this will really destabilize her because she has two little children who are in school, and you know, moving to Ottawa is going to stress her a lot. So I think, you know, it's good now. It's good that most companies are allowing us to work from home, which is very good for mothers. But I'm seeing a trend where companies, most are planning to go back to work, and I think companies, we can also say, you know, challenge companies to try and be more flexible. You know, if they are more flexible, then, you know, because this friend of mine, if she starts work and it's too challenging and she sees that moving to Ottawa she might decide not to move, or she moves here and she's finding it difficult to adjust, you know, into a new city, she might have to leave that job. So these are little things that, you know, not only as individuals or, you know, companies need to be more flexible. And we've talked about managers being more showing more empathy during this time. It is very key. And I said earlier that I have a boss, Danielle, who is fantastic. And because mothers, we have to, you know, take children for doctor's appointments, so many things. If you have a boss that is understanding, a manager that's understanding, then, you know, you can adjust to changing timelines and all that and still be able to work. So that's what I think.
I love that. Thank you, Chichi. Lauren, I might suggest that your Young Business Analyst group could do a brainstorm session for corporations and, you know, anonymously send recommendations. I bet you could come up with some great ideas of things corporations could do, because people are the best resources, and retraining people is not easy, especially not now. Onboarding virtually is a challenge. So thank you so much for our panelists. Thank you for asking the questions. Thank you for giving your time today to share with us on this really important topic. I appreciate it. I've loved meeting these fantastic women, and their insights and thoughts are just amazing. So that's all the time we have for today. Thank you everyone for participating. And again, thank you to our great panelists. I am so privileged to have got to meet you and spend some time with you getting ready for this. You will receive an email in a few days, or I guess just probably right away, following the webinar, with a link to the thought exchange. Can you go back to that word cloud just for a second? Those are the results of our thought exchange so far. It looks like that we have want to challenge many things, and we want to provide support, and we want to encourage more. I love all those words. So thank you for participating in that as well. Again, the slides are here. You might receive some additional information in that link. If you want to keep sharing comments, we're going to leave that thought exchange open for 24 hours, and then we'll probably be able to share those results, Mariah, with everyone. Is that true?
Yes,
And
we can
remember,
share the results.
good, thanks. And remember that this will be recorded and available for you in the IIBA webinar. So thank you to everyone who's been here. I appreciate your time. Happy International Women's Day.